Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I have the pleasure of introducing you to our guest speaker. She is a very good personal friend of mine. She's currently in the PhD program at the University of Alabama. And this is Chalise Macklin. She is a former journalist who has worked in broadcast, print, and online journalism, and just an all-around rock star. So Chalise, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Um, I am so happy to see you and be here and to talk to you about journalism and my experience.
Excellent. Well, why don't you introduce our students to your life as a journalist? What is it like being a journalist?
It is the most amazing thing. I like to say when I talk to my friends who work in other sectors, do other things in different industries, that I don't regret going to school, to J school, and becoming a journalist because a lot of them make more money than I do with the same type of degrees. But it's just wonderful. It's fulfilling. And the fact that I get information and I distribute it to people and they're getting information that they may otherwise not get. And most importantly, maybe from an angle that they wouldn't usually look at it from or get that different type of angle from an exact same subject matter is probably the most fulfilling part of what I do. But I absolutely love it. And it's really not about me. I really do it because I like to share information with other people.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part about journalism is the aspect of storytelling and really providing information to a community. So what do you see as like the biggest role of a journalist? What is the main goal of a journalist?
I am so old school with it that I still say that they are a watchdog for the people. We work for the community. We are here to hold public figures accountable. We are here to make sure that, like I said, information that they may otherwise not be privy to is given to them. So it is all about the people and giving them what they need and not necessarily watering it down, but still yet being objective and giving it to them from a perspective that they want to hear, not what we think they want to hear.
That's a great point in maintaining objectivity and really trying to focus on a large, wide set of opinions and viewpoints. Excellent. So I know you have worked across multimedia formats, which is
Mhm.
really common in the journalism industry today. I know I worked in both broadcast and online journalism. Walk us through your experience with newspapers. What was it like being a print journalist specifically?
Oh, so interesting to go down memory lane. I'll try to make a long story short. I majored in broadcast journalism. I was able to get an internship at a local broadcast station, a CBS affiliate at that in Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm from, and went to school. And so I was excited to have. I was camera operator number three. I was excited to have my job, an intern, and but once I graduated, I wanted to move from the production point of things. And when you work, a lot of students don't understand, it's particularly in TV news, even on a local level, you have to gain experience. And if you are starting, I didn't start in a market that is considered a starter market. Memphis is, if it's correct, number 50 on a 210 market number. And so I needed to go somewhere and get more experience in order to write and do more than production work. So I had to leave. And at the moment, I was sad because in my heart, I'm like, why can't I just get the skill I need here? But I had a boss there that was very nice and was like, if you go X place, get the experience of a year or two, come back, we'll hire you back. But you have to go to what is a starter market basically to make your mistakes. Is kind of what, in a nutshell, he was saying. So I ended up applying at a television station and a newspaper because I was really, and I didn't think I would get the newspaper job. My heart was getting into getting the television job, but I ultimately ended up getting a call from a local newspaper in a small town in Arkansas, right across the bridge from Memphis. So they're like bordering areas. And I became a newspaper writer. It's not what I initially majored in, but it was some of the best time for me. I will give print journalism its credit in that it makes you a better, stronger writer. You can't rely on sound bites and various other elements that comes with the broadcast medium. You have to spell it out, tell the story in words. You may have one picture to accommodate that in a newspaper. So although the bulk of my experience is in broadcasting and now digital, I did spend a little bit over 2 years at a local newspaper, and I have to say it is the foundation to my writing because I couldn't hide. I had to learn how to write, structure, inverted pyramid style, tell the story, and tell it uniquely, but still well written. So it was probably the job that I never wanted that I needed.
So I really like how you talked about the importance of one skill set really leading to another skill set from your time in print to broadcast. Talk to students who may be interested in a career in media or media writing about why it's important to prepare yourself for all different types of convergent media.
Absolutely. That was something that wasn't necessarily taught to me by my instructors or the mentors that I gained as I was working my way through being an entry level novice reporter or journalist. It is something that came to me from a space of survival, to be honest, but it's something that I now teach my students. I was a straight broadcast major. I minored in communication. To be honest, even as a millennial, when my school at the time didn't even have a digital or online track. Now they do. And so you can see how things evolves just over a few years of time. But I would strongly suggest a student maybe say, okay, if you know that your interest is more lying in political journalism or entertainment journalism, it's okay to make that your main focus. But I think it would be a disservice to themselves if they didn't pair that with something else. You should minor in something else, or you should have something else as a secondary way of doing things. Journalism has become a very fickle place. Newspapers are holding on by a thread. I mean, there still exist. You have New York Times, you have USA Today, you have these places, but local papers, there are not a lot of local papers, and there's only so many slots at local TV. Everybody thinks they're going to work at GMA or CNN, and it doesn't necessarily work that way. You have to be creative. You have to be unique, and you have to bring a special skill set. Every time I would enter into another space from my broadcast experience, from my print experience, and then manifesting that to magazine writing and then the digital world, the people in those other areas who were just only print or just online or digital or just broadcasting, they were constantly older people that were veteran journalists would say, I wish I had been more diverse and versatile. What you're doing is great. You're on the cusp of something different. And now it's becoming more people's thing to do. But for me, it originally started from survival, getting rejected for certain jobs, trying to find my way as a journalist, being able to make sure my voice was being heard and I was getting the type of jobs I wanted. And then I then took that information, especially once I started becoming an adjunct and telling my students, I based my thoughts to the students based on my personal experience as a journalist and of course the actual material, but there are certain things about being a journalist that a student just can't learn other than through experience, and I strongly suggest that students find a way to be unique and have more than one skill set and being able to work in more than one area of journalism. Just saying I only want to work at ESPN as a sports reporter, or I only want to do podcasts, you will not have a long-term career in journalism if you do that,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
it's really about adaptability in today's current media environment. So I'm glad that you're echoing what I've already told a lot of our students. So, you also talked about being unique, being creative, and really being yourself. And I know for you, that meant working for a Black-owned digital publication. And as an African-American woman in journalism, you hold a very important place within our industry. So,
Mhm.
talk to our students about the importance from your perspective of having more inclusion in the types of journalists and the types of voices that we're hearing.
It's so very important. When I worked at that newspaper that I spoke about earlier, I was the only person of color, only Black person specifically, only woman that was on their small editorial staff. So I had the privilege and sometimes the burden of trying to always during our meetings explain why certain topics or subjects should even be covered. Every other person I worked with at that particular job were all white men. So even in that, I didn't even have a white woman or other person to even try to say, just from a woman's perspective, why we should cover this, or from another ethnicity, whether it was Asian, Hispanic, or whatever. I was like the voice for women and all people of color at that particular place, which again, was a privilege and a burden at times. And that has happened to me in newsrooms when I was a news producer in Memphis, Tennessee, at a large market and then in a smaller market, where I would have to fight to say, this is why these type of stories are necessary, particularly in a morning show. Why I had to fight for, hey, this is why we should do a story on cereal recall. When my news director was saying that's a stupid story, I'm like, well, majority of your morning viewers are women, stay-at-home moms who are feeding their children, and this is a bigger story. It may not be obviously a protest, but it's still a story that needs to be covered. So I found myself trying to be the voice so many times to explain the need when people frankly didn't want to get the need. But then when I had the opportunity to go work for the Griot, which is a digital outlet that is African American owned, and the news is for the most part about African American people, it was one of the first times I felt seen, heard. I didn't have to fight for everything, and I was able to bring stories to a group of people who are underserved and underrepresented in the traditional mainstream media. A story, for example, on just example, for example, the protests that are happening right now amongst Breonna Taylor and the need for justice. Some people would argue where her family took a actual they took an actual lump sum of they were given money for what happened to her. So they should be happy. They were given some type of compensation. That's justice, right? To some people. Some people would say that, by law, the officers did what they were supposed to do. But there's always going to be different perspectives, and those perspectives should be covered. But the Griot recently did a story where they showcased how a white woman was shot in a similar manner and what type of justice was given. And when a black officer did it, he actually went to jail and the amount of time he served. You don't get those type of breakdowns sometimes in the mainstream media to showcase why this is a bigger deal and why this should matter. Quite frankly, sometimes people aren't going to see why certain stories matter to a specific group of people. If they're not outlets or people who work at those mainstream outlets that can represent that voice and place it and make it known why it's important, then we're doing a disservice, because it's not only about majority and their voice, it's about minorities. That means women, that means other people of color, that means LGBTQ. So being able to work at an African American publication that some may say you left a job that maybe paid more or was more known, that doesn't matter to me. It's a respectable outlet and it should be treated as such. And I don't think if you work local or national or black publication or an all Hispanic publication or whatever the case is, treat them all the same, because they're doing the same thing and the work is just as important as if I was working for a CNN as it is of me working for the Griot. So I don't think students should stray away from working at places that are all whatever, whether it's an all women's magazine, whether it's an all men for guys. If you feel that your voice is going to be heard best there, you're going to better serve people in those areas, you should do it. And hopefully they'll have a career like mine where you'll be able to work in multiple places, so you'll be able to draw from all of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, and I really liked how you phrased that, Chalise, that it was both a privilege and a burden at times. And I think for those of us who are not of a minority community, we need to be better advocates within our newsroom for people of color, for people who are in minority communities. And so it can't just be placed on those people of color. So thank you for reminding us that while you were thankful to have that opportunity, it also shouldn't be placed solely on your shoulders. We as an industry need to do a better job. So we're about to close out our interview. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our students about the print and digital industry that you think they should know, either as media writers or media consumers?
Yes, print and digital tend to have smaller news staff. So just like any other job, whatever they want to do, don't give up. do internships, do multiple internships. You may have to do some unpaid work until you can get college credit for it, or until you can get the job. Be willing to learn. Don't go in arrogant. Don't go in, let you know, a lot of them have better skills in terms of technical things than veterans, but veterans have the writing skills that you need, and the other, how to the rapport with people and how to actually do stories. So in a nutshell, learn, be willing to soak up what you need to do, and know that it may not happen in 2 years or 5 years. A journalism career is not about a sprint. It's just not. You have to go the long haul, and you may receive the kind of career you want later in life. And I don't think enough professors, at least I didn't have, to explain it to me, that if it doesn't happen for you in a 3 to 5, maybe 7 year span, that doesn't mean give up on your career. So go in knowing that you have to gain experience, and sometimes you're qualified and you'll still be looked over, but be really good at what you do, be a great writer, be humble, have a pleasant attitude to work with, and most importantly, be willing to do the long haul work, because it's not an overnight career, and it's for people that love it. If it's for the money, you will be miserable a lot. You have to have a passion for it, and you have to be willing to put in the time.
Well, as a fellow journalist who lived off ramen for my first few years of my career, I completely agree.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Chalise, for providing your wonderful insight for our students on the industry. We very much appreciate it, and hope to have you in person sometime soon once COVID is over for a guest speaker then. But thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. I will be in touch soon with our next assignments.